Thanks for joining me for another reading through the Bible in chronological order. Today we're in Numbers chapter 33 in the Christian Standard Bible. These were the stages of the Israelites' journey when they went out of the land of Egypt by their military divisions under the leadership of Moses and Aaron. At the Lord's command, Moses wrote down the starting points for the stages of their journey, and these are the stages listed by their starting points. They traveled from Ramses in the first month on the 15th day of the month. On the day after the Passover, the Israelites went out defiantly in the sight of all the Egyptians. Meanwhile, the Egyptians were burying every firstborn male the Lord had struck down among them, for the Lord had executed judgment against their gods. The Israelites traveled from Ramses and camped at Succoth. They traveled from Succoth and camped at Etham, which is on the edge of the wilderness. They traveled from Etham and turned back to Pi-hahiroth, which faces Baal-Zephon, and they camped before Migdal. They traveled from Pi-hahiroth and crossed through the middle of the sea into the wilderness. They took a 3-day journey into the wilderness of Etham and camped at Marah. They traveled from Marah and came to Elim. There were 12 springs and 70 date palms at Elim, and so they camped there. They traveled from Elim and camped by the Red Sea. They traveled from the Red Sea and camped to the wilderness of Sin. They traveled from the wilderness of Sin and camped to Dophkah. They traveled from Dophkah and camped at Alush. They traveled from Alush and camped at Rephidim, and where there was no water for the people to drink. They traveled from Rephidim and camped in the wilderness of Sinai. They traveled from the wilderness of Sinai and camped at Kibroth Hattaavah. They traveled from Kibroth Hattaavah and camped at Hazeroth. They traveled from Hazeroth and camped at Rithmah. They traveled from Rithmah and camped at Rimmon Perez. They traveled from Rimmon Perez and camped at Libnah. They traveled from Libnah and camped at Risa. They traveled from Risa and camped at Kehelatha. They traveled from Kehelatha and camped at Mount Shepher. They traveled from Mount Shepher and camped at Heradah. They traveled from Heradah and camped at Machiloth. They traveled from Machiloth and camped at Tahath. They traveled from Tahath and camped at Terah. They traveled from Terah and camped at Mithkah. They traveled from Mithkah and camped at Hashmonah. They traveled from Hashmonah and camped at Maseroth. They traveled from Maseroth and camped at Bene Jachin. They traveled from Bene Jachin and camped at Hor Haggigad. They traveled from Hor Haggigad and camped at Jotbatha. They traveled from Jotbatha and camped at Abronah. They traveled from Abronah and camped at Ezion-Geber. And they traveled from Ezion-Geber and camped in the wilderness of Zin, that is Kadesh. They traveled from Kadesh and camped at Mount Hor on the edge of the land of Edom. At the Lord's command, the priest Aaron climbed Mount Hor and died there on the first day of the 5th month in the 40th year after the Israelites went out of the land of Egypt. Aaron was 123 years old when he died on Mount Hor. At that time, the Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the Negev in the land of Canaan, heard the Israelites were coming. And they traveled from Mount Hor and camped at Zalmanah. They traveled from Zalmanah and camped at Punon. They traveled from Punon and camped at Oboth. They traveled from Oboth and camped at Abarim at the border of Moab. They traveled from Ayim and camped at Dibon-Gad. They traveled from Dibon-Gad and camped at Almon Diblathaim. They traveled from Almon Diblathaim and camped in the Abarim range facing Nebo. They traveled from the Abarim range and camped on the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. And they camped by the Jordan from Beth Jeshimoth to the Acacia meadow on the plains of Moab. And the Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. Tell the Israelites, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you must drive out all the inhabitants of the land before you, destroy all their stone images and cast images, and demolish all their high places. You are to take possession of the land and settle in it because I have given you the land to possess. You are to receive the land as an inheritance by lot according to your clans. Increase the inheritance for a large clan and decrease it for a small one. Whatever place the lot indicates for someone will be his. You will receive an inheritance according to your ancestral tribes. But if you don't drive out the inhabitants of the land before you, those who allow to remain will become barbs for your eyes and thorns for your sides. They will harass you in the land where you will live, and what I plan to do to them, I will do to you. Chapter 34. The Lord spoke to Moses, command the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land of Canaan, it will be allotted to you as an inheritance with these borders. Your southern side will be from the wilderness of Zin along the boundary of Edom. Your southern border on the east will begin at the east end of the Dead Sea. Your border will turn south at the Scorpion's Ascent, proceed to Zin, and end south of Kadesh Barnea. It will go to Hazar Edah and proceed to Asmon. The border will turn from Asmon to the Brook of Egypt, where it will end at the Mediterranean Sea. Your western border will be the coastline of the Mediterranean Sea. This will be your western border. This will be your northern border. From the Mediterranean Sea, draw a line to Mount Hor. From Mount Hor, draw a line to the entrance of Hamath, and the border will reach Zedad. Then the border will go to Zephron and end at Haza-Enan, and this will be your northern border. For your eastern border, draw a line from Haza-Enan to Shephem. The border will go down from Shephem to Riblah east of Ain. It will continue down and reach the eastern slope of the Sea of Shinneroth. Then the border will go down to the Jordan and end at the Dead Sea, and this will be your land defined by its borders on all sides. So Moses commanded the Israelites, this is the land you are to receive by lot as an inheritance, which the Lord commanded to be given to the 9.5 tribes. For the tribe of Reuben's descendants and the tribe of Gad's descendants have received their inheritance according to their ancestral families, and half the tribe of Manasseh has received its inheritance. The 2.5 tribes have received their inheritance across the Jordan east of Jericho toward the sunrise. So the Lord spoke to Moses. These are the names of the men who are to distribute the land as an inheritance for you. The priest Eleazar and Joshua son of Nun. Take one leader from each tribe to distribute the land. These are the names of the men. Caleb, son of Jephunneh, from the tribe of Judah. Shemuel, son of Amminahud, from the tribe of Simeon's descendants. Elidad, son of Chislan, from the tribe of Benjamin. Buki, son of Jogli, a leader from the tribe of Dan's descendants. From the sons of Joseph. Haniel, son of Ephod, a leader from the tribe of Manasseh's descendants. Kemuel, son of Shiftan, a leader from the tribe of Ephraim's descendants. Eliazaphan, son of Parnach, a leader from the tribe of Zebulun's descendants. Paltiel, son of Azan, a leader from the tribe of Issachar's descendants. Ahihud, son of Shalomai, a leader from the tribe of Asher's descendants. And Pedahel, son of Amminahud, a leader from the tribe of Naphtali's descendants. These are the ones the Lord commanded to distribute the inheritance to the Israelites in the land of Canaan. So in our reading today, it's details about the conquest of the land, and more specifically, I guess, not really the conquest, but how the land will be distributed. In great detail, God goes to that point, then reminds them that in the conquest, if they don't remove the Canaanites as God has commanded them to, they will forever be a barb in their eye and a thorn in their side. And of course, as history foretells, or as history shows, this foretells the reality of what will be Israel's history. Join me again for another reading tomorrow through the Bible in chronological order.